Hello, everyone, and welcome to a long-awaited episode of A Talk with the Elementals. This has been a very long time since one of these episodes has popped up. It's usually we do discussions of me and Joanna, and you see Interstellar Council a lot, but this particular group came through on a session with a gentleman in Ireland. And I will ask him if I can put a fragment of the session in here. If not, you'll just see us talking here. But there was a lot of focus on the Hill of Tara when we were there. Saw in his session that there were elven beings that once existed about 25,000 years ago around the Hill of Tara. And the history of Leah Fáil, the stone here. I'll share the screen. Do this here. And this is actually quite interesting. I came to find out it's a piece of Atlantean tech as well, and ancient stone technology. And it's basically what was known about Tara. It says right here, according to tradition, when a true Irish or Scottish king placed a foot on Leah Fáil, it cried out to announce its rightful reign. Tara was finally abandoned in 1022 by the then High King of Ireland, Mael Shliain. I think that's how you pronounce it. However, the hill has always retained its importance to the Irish identity. It's very similar to what's known as the Stone of Scone or the Stone of Destiny in Scotland. That's more for Scottish kings. There's a very colorful history about the Scottish hierarchy with that. Where they have this little feud between them and England of who it got stolen from Scotland, given to England, all of that, and was finally returned, I'll say, later on in history. But some people think it may not be the real one. But this stone, the Hill of Tara or Leah Fáil, is pretty much the same thing. And I found out that the Stone of Scone was Egyptian limestone, and it came from I believe, one of the pyramids there. There's also a famous pharaoh that was buried in Ireland. I found this out today. It was a famous king, who now the name escapes me, but it's a pharaoh that around the time of the fall of Atlantis and fall of Egypt, he was then he escaped to Ireland and was buried there and acknowledged as an Egyptian pharaoh. Essentially, I found out he was one of the Osiris family that governed one of the other territories as draconian forces started manipulating the forces there. He was one of them that beat the hell out of there before the nuclear blast hit Atlantis. So, and of course, ISIS screwed up both sides there. So it was like when she corrupted, she spread the corruption all the way to friggin' Egypt. So it was earlier on in Atlantis's history, but. The residents of Tara, they just said, we don't give a shit about her. Move on. Okay. She hurt us. Move on. Okay. So it's like, yeah, I don't give a crap either. So that was just some of the history there. But the one thing they focus on is about 25,000 years ago, there was I found out there were long-skulled people there that were elf-like. That were there. These ones were good, and they tried to form elements of civilization in other areas of the world that weren't Atlantis. I believe they were one of the other Atlantean factions that time. It was another 15,000 years prior to the fall. So, and it was a different world at that time. And I spoke to one by the name of Io one time on a channeling, and one by the name of Gratis one time on a channeling. And said they came to Earth roughly around that time to form different types of civilization, but they were misinterpreted by the people because of Orion manipulation. They were misinterpreted because they were saying they were trying to present human sovereignty to them, and said by saying, okay, this is yours, this is yours, this is mine, sort of thing, and it ended up causing some division to like different plots of land. Everything was kind of cohabitated before, and some interference kind of went the wrong way in that area. Yeah, what they're trying to tell me. Yeah, that's what Io told me quite a while. That was over 2 years ago when I heard that one. But when we saw that special on the Celtic history and everything. What else did you guys want to touch on? Okay, yeah, it was during the was this during the Fomorian Tuathan conflict? No, that was later. Okay. The what happened, I'll say briefly during that, is when the Orions created the Tuatha De Danann. They were another form of elf. If you want to think of the Orions as looking like deteriorated elves with black hoods that were rather elderly looking, and the Fomorian Orion, and then you have the Tuatha, which eventually revolted against them. They fought each other, and humans got caught in the middle. They took either side. And eventually, the Irish thought they'd conquered the Tuatha De Danann when they really retreated into a different dimension after all. They won the conflict with the Fomorians, but then the humans began to get uppity towards them. And that's how you have the history of Ireland starting at that point. So, guys, where do you fall into this with the Hill of Tara? I know this is a singing stone of some kind that when someone of a particular genetics would step onto it, it would go kind of like in Stargate with the ancient gene, where somebody would touch a piece of the ancient technology and it would light up because it was genetically key coded. Yes, and also the giants that we've been talking to on Interstellar Council also key coded certain information to unlock when people reach a certain frequency or evolutionary stage. That's also what Hill of Tara does as well. It's an unlocking of benevolent Keshic galactic information. All right, and human history and ancient history, and the storage node is what you're trying to tell me as well. But it would announce people that had the genetics that actually constructed this thing, is what you're saying. Tell me people of Atlantis and further back. Yes, of course. Yeah, they said I nailed that. People that have those descendant lineages. Just like in Ireland, you have mixes of elf. You have also fish people. One of their famous deities, Manannan, was an Irish king that was also known to be part fish. So that was, there's also fish beings that are Anunnaki that we even saw in that program yesterday that came up. So yeah, that was like one of the Irish kings was also an Anunnaki king at the time as well. So let's see. There's four. There's 1, 2, 3 of you here. So more than that, yeah, I see a whole group of you around Hill of Tara. And what happened with him when he asked for benevolent Fae assistance and to let them know they were there, the wind just rushed, like, and the same happened here. This pine tree we have out here, more so than it's blowing now outside, it was doing this. So they were doing that. They said we have similar type Fae in this area, and Clorvin and Beeman are only about this big. So, but Teklanor is about 70 feet high. Did you say? Yes, you're rather tall for a Frabosi. You're close to more your other cousin's height, so 100, 200 feet. So. They are also survivors of Atlantis that went off into other areas of the world, some of them here in North America. And they have cousins that are in Europe and on the other edge of the United States and everything as well, where there was also cousins that the Native Americans unfortunately tried to wipe out and smoke them out in caves and stuff like that. So, yes, that's not what we're here for. Okay. Let's see. All right, let's see. The History B is concluded in that area. Okay, let's see. So who wants to talk? Is it Teklanor, Beeman, or Clorvin? Clorvin's shy. Beeman is here. Okay, I don't know what you mean by that, but okay. I mean, he doesn't want to do it. Okay, so it's Teklanor is the last one then. Yes, you're the one that wants to do this. Okay. Man, we haven't had one of these shows in a while, folks, so I guess I'll get it off share screen here. You're not as old as those elves that I saw before with the bigger skull. Am and not. Okay, meaning the history you want to say is not that far back. Okay. And if people are watching the after show, you know who the Frabosi are already. They're an elemental giant race that are also cousins to centaurs and unicorns, I believe, as well. And a lot of these hominids and everything were actually far more hybridized than we understand. Just like I've mentioned a being by the name of the Nebraska man that was found in Nebraska that had pig DNA and Cro-Magnon DNA fused. So it's essentially the same type of difference here. You see, have animal and have human-like, and both groups are merged essentially. Yes, you're like when he's like this. Okay, so he goes, I believe Viking and Conrad would call this a quilting bee. Shut up. Okay, all right. Meaning we talked too much. Okay, that's what their nickname for it was. So. Okay, Teklenor? No, or Teklenor. Teklenor, okay. Yes, I know your time is limited, I understand. But why is it limited for us and not after show? Different conduit, okay. Go through the crystal, please. Yes, I am Tiklanor of, you would say, of Tara in the Irish language. I did venture from Atlantis and had a hand in helping to construct what you call Fáil. I and my people and other giant builders moved some of these stones into place in different parts of the world. But this particular stone is a PowerPoint and has access to an inordinate amount of genetic knowledge and you would say right of kings, but that is not accurate at all. It is more or less descendants of who built. And when you get to a particular genetic resonance frequency, it recognizes who built, and it recognizes what you would call right of kings or right of succession, like your stone of scone, which is a part of what you would say is a data node or access point of information that has long since been demolished from Egypt. The stone still retained some of its ability since it is a dimensional stone fragment piece. They were built out of the limestone and other quarries there because this is what was accessible. This stone is the most efficient. Some of it is quartz granite, but also your Stonehenge is made from the lotus or blue stone, which is the most efficient dimensional stone at official types currently in existence. This would be the most beneficial in your pieces if you could obtain it. It is nearly impossible to do so, unfortunately. The stone retains information from Earth's past, from the times of Atlantis. It even survived the explosion and floods around surrounding Atlantis. The nuclear fusion technology of the Orion contingencies and the destroying of the self of the heart of Atlantis, which that heart, the true heart, still remains with its council, but they can answer these questions more accurately than I. I there served as more of a communications translator between aspects of the Frabosi and other races. We communicate sometimes in symbols and in ceremony in wood, but we can also telepathically choose to do so. You would see me as more of an interfacer in that way, but not quite the same. Or is a greeter, but not quite the same. Just like your Duan was a more of a farming expert, I had my areas of expertise and ancient magic. The stone that rests upon Tara has been audited to this day because of information that has come to light within its structural integrity. In your game that he likes to play called Kingdoms of Amalur, there are stones that hold knowledge that have a movement that move from top to bottom and bottom to top as they record like a toggle switch. This is only partially accurate because they don't always move, but this one does to an extent within its molecular structure and can record sounds in very much the same way. So if someone of a certain genetics touched it, it would indeed announce the presence in that way and give the knowledge to someone at a particular frequency and be able to hear the recording within their own genome, either through channeling such as this or audibly given a certain frequency. So those stones in that game were very accurate in that way and set in a familiar setting such as Tara-ish. The elementals in this area appreciate gifting in symbolism form for protection of properties. This is why when you took down the fairy circle, there were some of the tree fae that were disappointed in your area, but this is not, there is no grudge here. It's just that they were liking the focal point, which can continue in other forms. They are always sad when things change, but are also happy when things change. They sometimes can seem fickle. This is also why they do not always channel and do things. They are very innocent in nature. This is why I was chosen as the channeler for today, along with Clorvin and Beeman here. Clorvin and Beeman's people tend to be very shy and tend to watch from the trees and tend to watch from even city areas, even as you've reported, as your dear sister reported, seeing one of their kind in a tree near a McDonald's at one point. Yes, they do watch people in the nearby trees and stones. They will offer, as humans would interpret, good luck in that way if they like a person, such as other elementals that do leave money and such. But them, they will just send good tidings. This is not what this conversation was supposed to be about, but they just wanted to say this in this way. The point I'm making is it is more or less a conversation about offerings to the earth, such as stone circles, shungite, as you both like to do, different metals, different rocks and stones of all types, even though the Sasquatch tend to hold more story time when it comes to the gifting. All there is appreciate the different patterns and the different offerings, even if they never touch what you leave. It is more of the energetic presence. The Sasquatch are known for taking the things they find, as are gnomes and some of the tree fae, but it is more or less seen as the energetic blessing of the land by most. And some like little shiny things to take with them as well. So I can go into questions if you like.
Well, thank you. So since this is a talk with the elementals and it's kind of a standalone series, even though, there's been a lot done on the Galactic and Stellar Council and people may not have listened to this, I'd like to ask some things that may or may not be repetitive, but to allow this to be kind of standalone. So again, in what's been discussed today, there was a discussion regarding first Atlantis and, then the destruction of Atlantis. So just to recap regarding Atlantis. So yes, you are more of a nature-bound being. However, if people saw you and looked at you, would they think you were more nature bound or more human like?
You would see both because I have the features of what you would almost see as a giant, but almost like a caveman type of person. I am 70 feet tall, however, and have more of a horn that protrudes from my forehead. My hair is red and goes clear to the middle of my back. I myself am transmitting from the hill of Tara, but a lot of my people exist in your continent of North of America in a bubble that is further up towards your Canadian border and further over into the edges of your country. It shifts and moves periodically. As Jer Zolkor was speaking about on Interstellar Council, we have villages that are set up inside of this, but we live amongst nature and we communicate in more ritualistic burning of pieces of wood with symbolism on it. We also originated from Atlantis, along with many other species of giants, the Stowe being one who communicated yesterday from your country of Norway and the high mountains, and also the giants that were the same that created what you know as druids. There were corrupted ones that created more of the vampiric druids, and then there were the ones that were more like your Gandalf the White and Saruman the White in those respects, or Gandalf the Grey and Saruman the White, that then formed what you know as druidic religious rites in that way, or humans did later on. But if people looked at me, they would see me more or less as elemental. Our people have been depicted in some of your literature, but it's been mostly some of the other more Viking types that have got more of the limelight in that respect.
So again, before the, let's say, true known history was, for whatever reason, altered to make everything seem very human-like, what people are used to seeing, and in the cultures of Atlantis and the cultures of Mu and the cultures of different things, you actually had a multitude of different cultures. Some of them came from not Earth, they came and settled their historical presence, and they came and settled in some of these areas and then spread out, maybe colonized also a few other areas. So in your history, in your complete existence, even though you're an elemental being, are you an elemental being in your history as one that actually came of Earth from Earth, or was there a colonization from somewhere else?
We came to Earth from Earth. Actually, we have always been here, as far as we know. Other groups are hybridized beings from galactic to elemental, such as some of our dear cousins with elf and whatnot. But there are other beings that have always been here, such as myself. We sprang from different elemental bringings many millions of years ago and evolved into the being that you see here. And as did other beings that eventually hybridized to create other different types of beings, such as the Stowe in Norway. They are part elemental, part Viking, which then descended from inhabitants of Atlantis, which descended from Asgard. So in this respect, you're getting mixes of Pleiadian elf, Syrian elf, Lyran, and all in between. I myself am what you would call a pure Terran earther.
So everyone, again, a culture was there of your people in Atlantis. Had they already started migrating to other parts of the world, like to the North American continent, into the Middle East, or did that not occur until after the problems in in Atlantis started to arise?
Yes, you are correct. It was some of us were off continent when Atlantis was destroyed. I'll say destroyed because there is a copy of it currently, and there are some of us there. But We began to, as the fighting began and as the different races began to degenerate down into their more primal ways of viewing things, as the Orions began to manipulate them thusly, we escaped to other areas of the globe, your North America being the closest to where we were as a population, and other parts of Europe as well. There are variations of different giants and different peoples throughout the world here, but we also live in our own pocket that is its own reality currently. Giant forests and villages and pathways that humans would find very, very fascinating. We do not mean to be a tease in this area, but humans would not necessarily be able to traverse into our frequency as of yet. We've even incarnated into human form to walk amongst you and to learn. But we, as Atlantis was degenerating and the fighting began, we did escape to other parts of the globe and were not discovered by Orion forces, at least not all of us.
And so when you mean pocket, when people say the word pocket, and again, Atlantis actually, I don't know any other way to say it. There was a copy of it kind of skewed off onto a different timeline, let's say, that it just progressed in a more positive way, I'm assuming, in that timeline, but I don't know, that's a whole nother story, but it exists. And when you talk about your pocket or other people talk about their pocket, and you just brought up the fact that, humans right now aren't able to get into these areas, different frequency, different vibration, different level. So the question becomes, there are conversations that we have that, let's use the Sasquatch, for example, that as humans expand and their frequency capabilities of complete vision and everything expand, there's going to be a moment where we're going to start to see things that are now within our frequency range to be a part of our lives that aren't going to necessarily leave. They're now a part of our lives because our expansion of frequency has occurred. When you talk about a pocket, is there a natural progression of these different frequencies as we expand, that we always enter these pockets, or are some of these pockets really something that could always stay separate?
They can always stay separate, or you can have one merge back with reality. You see, different species have their own preferences as to these different pockets. What they are, they're isolated dimensional slices that a whole civilization, or at least part of one, can live within. Elves do this. Your Tirnanog is one of these in Ireland. Ours is one of these in North America. The Stowe have their timeline is more concurrent with your own. They are just in a different frequency, and they are further up in height than any human can get to. Some are just concurrent with your frequency. We had this shift into a different frequency, our pocket. It is technological in nature. These were constructed utilizing different Atlantean technologies and ancient technologies. Your New Vera or your New Vegas is one of these, but of a newer vintage of that, where the residents of that area were hiding from the Darshinian contingents of the planet Darshin when they escaped from there. We did something very, very similar with our pocket and Atlantis. It was very similar by a similarly set of driven beings that were essentially the basis for some of your Nazi contingents. It's also very similar where some of your people escaped to Europe and the United States during the Nazi invasions. It's no different in that respect, but these pockets can all be in different frequencies. They can be in different time states, such as one that both of you encountered in a channeling session once, whereas the beings there still thought it was hundreds of thousands of years ago. And the outside time was speeding past at a breakneck speed. And all the entanglements were thusly of himself were culminating into that one bubble. So some of the physics can be askewed in that way. Some of your fairy folk live within these. Some of them are in dimensional states. These are slightly different. Atlantis sits in its own, you would say, timeline as well, where They have skewed off. Lemuria has done the same, where one could, as a human scientist, would see this as a copy. It really is not. It was more of a backup plan, just in case something occurred, to where a timeline skew or a parallel world was created to keep that beneficial version of the continent going. Same thing happened with Lemuria and other areas, like the one they mentioned was the Scottish village up in 1700 Scotland. There was an ancient being there by the name of Tagarin who created this village to do the same, a certain skew off to the side that is coexisting right next to areas of Scotland itself, but is sitting within what you would consider to be a parallel dimension. But from their frequency standpoint and from their civilization standpoint, nothing has changed since the early 1700s. It is the same for Atlantis, where it just kept moving on and going on. Major civilizations created backups such as this, or just wanted to keep existing as they did and did not want any interferences in that particular way or interruptions in cultures. You'll see some of these things happen in the Middle East as well.
So the curiosity that I have with all of this, again, since some of these pockets, they may never make themselves known, especially the ones that want to be left to themselves to exist how they want to exist. Mm-hmm. And they may not even, it sounds like some of them are choosing not to become, they just want to, I don't want to say, I'm trying to figure out the right words, and I'm going to use what I think are the wrong words, but it will help give an idea that some people are choosing, they like the way that they exist and they don't want to, in a sense, advance technologically, and I don't want to say that, I'm sure they're advancing, but I'm trying to give a visualization of, a moment in time where they just like it. They like to be that way. They want to stay that way. And thus, those would tend to be the groups that we'll never potentially know about because they don't want us to know about them. But then there are others, plenty of them, although it still may be a drop of the bucket, that have reached out to let us know that they exist. Mm-hmm. And so I find it interesting because I kind of think, well, what's the purpose of knowing that this pocket exists? Meaning, i.e., to understand more about the dynamics of how everything works. That could be one reason, because some of these pockets could choose never to make themselves other than having communication to really have visitors, mm-hmm. or there is a goal of eventually merging back together when everything is right. But I find it interesting concept is to, for example, you guys really want us to know about this and really want us to know that your pocket or different things exist. So my question is, besides just the communication and the desire for us to know, what are your reasons for wanting to have these communications?
It is more or less a exchange, not of information, but of history and of familial solidarity, meaning that we all knew each other at one time in history, one form or another. And it is coming to the times in history where some of these barriers and long held beliefs that certain things did not exist are coming to a quick end. And I mean by quick end, I mean from our perspective, it is. It could be several decades, but in this, we are wanting to inform people what is going on. You would see this as more of a disclosure, and this is true, but that has more of the word is gaining more of a mixed connotation with some negativity in there. So suffice it to say, we are informing people of what their past is because the past is resurfacing anyway, and we are putting context to what is going on as the timelines all realign and the energies come back into their own. The fading of one and the reemergence of something else old, either good or bad, needs to have context put to it, because some of these histories have, from human perspective, been lost. And nothing has truly been lost, because you see from the Hill of Tara, it still stands exactly where it stood when it was built, and with the exact same information it had when it was built. So adding context to what human history truly is and where you have come from and where all these beings have come from is the goal of beings such as myself, that and getting you to remember who you truly were in the past. It is not always mirroring something bad, you see, when you're bringing up the past, because it is bringing back something that is so badly needed. Now, when it is not needed is when it comes in dark mirroring. There is a big difference here. You can access stuff, say, from Atlantis without accessing the fall. You can access the library without accessing the fall. You can talk to us without accessing your own dark history. Even though finding those and resolving those is most important, is extremely important. Once it's been resolved, you can still access your own Akashic history or benevolent Akashic, and just not bringing forth the bad personality traits that you once had in other expressional states, or ideas from darker expressions and the like. Even if something, say if something good was from a certain expression, you can use here, yes, but weeding out the things that don't serve now and keeping the things that do will work, such as the communications with us and beings giving you the history that humans think is a myth and legend alone.
Which I'm glad you said it the way you said it, because again, we've always been trying to say, be careful. A lot of people are too generalized. They're like, we just want Atlantis to come back, or we want, it's like they magically want the lands to rise out of the ocean and let Atlantis re-exist, without understanding they don't want that kind of generality, because it wasn't stable in the end at all.
Mm-mm.
And, you want to just pull pieces that may be beneficial for you, but not the whole thing. Same thing about Egypt and different places where they're trying to kind of resurrect the old, but that really wouldn't be for your highest good at all.
No.
But people, I guess the way that the history has presented itself so far, again, history is written by the victors, history is written with a spin to it, that, that you don't realize really, truly what was going on at a particular period of time, to know that you don't want all the aspects back, only certain ones.
Mm-hmm. Just like when Dear Lyra came back into the spatial skies, it came back just before its destruction, because they had a similar thing in place where they jumped in themselves, essentially, to a different timeline of existence, very much like Atlantis, and can reverb back into this one if they so chose. And that's what happened with Lyra. They had the same contingency plan in place to where they could rewind the clock back, just not bringing back any of the Orion influences in there. They brought it back to that particular point without the invaders knocking on their door. And this
is important, because let's just use the kind of some of the Orion. Again, some of the beings that were back then, I guess the ones, again, that people now a lot of times refer to, or to what they think of when they think of angelic, not really realizing whom truly the history has written something different about these beings, whom some of them really, really are. They were very strong. They were very powerful. They were really, in a sense, not able to be defeated, and it wasn't for highest good, believe me. Fast forward now 500,000 years, because it really goes, a lot of it goes back really, really far. Some of those beings are only a shadow of their former self.
Mm-hmm.
You do not want to open any sort of bridge or doorway to allow the fuller being through to this time frame. You don't want to do it, because we're having a hard enough time with their older selves, let's say, which now are not nearly what they were back then. And I think people really have to get that, in their heads, that, we were so under the thumb. We were really in the midst of truly being pounded upon as souls back then. And, time, these beings did not escape time. They didn't. They came into the expression and they became now a part of a time where maybe they were fine elsewhere, but now time is taking its toll on them. And so, that allows now in the current present moment, although it looks chaotic, although it's chaos in a sense, don't be reaching back for a time that really was the beginning of our fall, let's say, for humanity under the thumb. But you just kind of think about that a little bit. You do not want to be doing that. However, learn to bring back those little pieces that give you wisdom and give you things, but don't bring back the whole. And, and just kind of keep that in mind.
The whole of the experience, yes.
Yeah.
Even though it's good for historical purposes to know these things.
Right.
The conduits that you open can be forever lasting in the wrong direction, you see, or what humans would see as the wrong direction. Think of the fairy circles and what we were speaking about before, creating different conduits, say, for different benevolent fairies to communicate and come through, or building something as, say, the Hill of Tara. This is different, but what happened on Atlantis, there were both the women of Atlantis, which we will not name any of them currently. You cannot necessarily polish a turd anyway. So in this particular way, we do not usually judge, but for their sake, yes. In this, also, there were certain scientists that used technology as well as magic to open different portals because they were getting the idea to do so, just like when the idea to create nuclear technology came into being. Oh, this was an innovation. Was it? Or was this something that was communicated to them from the wrong source? Same thing with the women of the Vril, which again, women of Atlantis, again, brought through the technology of Aldebaran. This is not necessarily something that was beneficial to your people because it was the worst of you that actually got a hold of this kind of power.
And to just add to that, what you're saying, the reason we say people like, well, what else were we supposed to do? Needed nuclear energy, need that. But please understand that within that history, an alternative was there and present and rejected because it was something that wasn't going to make money for certain people.
Yep.
Again, this is where I talk about Tesla and different people who had different ways of creating things. It all went underground into black ops because on the surface, there was no way to control people over that product. So we're not saying you should have ditched nuclear energy and just suffered. No, what really was happening is that there were other types of things that were out there that would be for the people's highest good that were squelched. And then this energy that's, can be unfortunately catastrophic in certain types of ways it's used, was allowed to build its way up versus something that was completely squelched. So at least we want to give it perspective. We're not saying we wouldn't have energy. We're saying that there was a positive one that was being brought up that was squelched for this one to rise into its place, which allowed for more control. And that we want you to have perspective, on those comments, because, we're not saying throw everything to the wolves. It's just like desalinization. Desalinization of the oceans could have been paid for 1,000,000 times over by now, but it's been squelched. We have water all around us. We have immense amounts, but the idea of making something simple, what I mean, that could be paid for, and we have plenty of water for farming, for whatever we need, but it was squelched. And people now, little pockets, are figuring out simple things, how to even, make water out of what you would think is desert air. So they are reinventing things, but there always seems to be something that truly is for humanity's good that seems to get squelched and let something else rise in its place that allows for more control. And that's a concept that people really have to understand right now, that there were alternatives that were not listened to. And there was a lot of effort, thoughts in people's heads, or whatever you want to say, that contributing to them not listening to something that really would have been for everyone's highest good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, such as your weather control and the like. It is being weaponized by again, some of the very same people and beings that brought things forth, even though your Tesla would have not approved of how this was utilized. The same also with your nuclear technology. They thought it was one of the greatest innovations to a type of free energy, when in fact it pierces any and all dimensional layers around it. This is one of your fear tactics that's being currently used with your Russian power plant, for instance. Some beings know by poking at one of those, they can cause the greatest amount of discord and fear. So this has a dark connotation behind it. In your cosmos, nuclear isotopes are actually outlawed. Earth is one of the only ones left that contains this type of energy. This is why a lot of the Orions are here. So you see, they created this type of energy in their own dimension. This is something that they can thrive off of, and it regenerates their forms to full, even if they have not transferred to another body, say a Fomorian form that lives on top of a nuclear disaster such as Chernobyl, can regenerate to its fullest power. Even if they cannot connect to another time frame. But it's actually easier for them to manipulate humans and to opening conduits to other time frames, such as your Nibiru prophecy, for instance. Many people are thinking this is wonderful and good because, again, those same creatures that got dear Odin to drop the barrier around the system are the ones transmitting to let a version of their planet through, very much like how Atlantis copied itself, so did they in that respect, but it is stuck within a lock. It is destroyed, yes, but you are dealing with manipulators of time, just like in your Marvel movies when the creature Thanos took the time stone and undid, let's say, the Vision's death, for instance, and it's in a similar fashion in that way. Imagine if a portal would open with their world intact, it would cancel out your own. This is not something that you wished, even though we have all said in the past, and elementals have said that they would not get rid of their farm. There would be a point where they would not need one if enough people empowered them. So this is, they would be able to have power everlasting with a nuclear irradiated planet in that particular way. This is one of the reasons why different races hate nuclear power and they will want to get rid of it. It pollutes their dimensions, it pollutes the earth, and it pollutes humanity, and it empowers the conquerors.
So to change subjects a little bit, because I am curious about your thoughts on something else. So I've always appreciated the show that a lot of people can see, which is called Ancient Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter to me whether all the information is perfect or not, because they're bringing up such a lot of great things for people to ponder over. How could these be? So in the era where you were, again, they look at the pyramids. Oh, I think they're even older than what they think. Wait a minute, I think they're even older than what we're thinking we think. And how all that's progressed. And my curiosity is, with the fact that there truly were giants on this planet, all of these different sites around the world, in Peru, in North America. I do bring up Cahokia Mounds in that situation, mm-hmm. because again, some of these things that were built, one of the things when they did find regular humans, one of the interesting things there was no one had back problems. Well, how could they be building all of this stuff and no one have back problems? So, but there was thoughts that there were giants present at the time, giants also present. And so in these different places around the world with these huge megalithic type of stones, we understand there is also sound technology that we don't understand yet that can help move them. But my curiosity is how many groups of giants were around and how many of them participated potentially in some of these sites?
Some of them were built with their bare hands alone because they were so large, like myself. somewhere in excess of 50, 70, 200, 200 feet. And they could easily pick up one of them and move them. And some of your earlier temples were of this. This is why you don't have the technology to do it, because no offense to humans, you are too small to move some of these. This is why also some of the giant DNA was used and utilized as a beast of burden very much by some of the Orion contingents, so they could actually construct some things as well. They had high technology, but they could not always get into places that were more toxic to themselves. When the giants revolted against them again, they decided to flood the earth. And this, again, this goes back to your biblical Nephilim, but that is more of a generic name. So I would not trust any being using the term Nephilim, because it is essentially just means giant, generic in this. But in this respect, these sites that were built, such as some of your Tiwanaku type sites and Cahokia and the like, yes, these were done primarily by giant builders, building the different platforms and the different temple and energetic sites that were around the globe. Some of them, again, were workers. Other ones were more or less kings. You encountered both of these at Cahokia, the one that said he could change size and sit in a human throne. This was true. I myself can do the same, as well as some of my cousins can also do the same. Some of their DNA became also merged with other humans that were there as well, and created different lineages that stretched also down into your south, where you too encountered other giants that weren't always as friendly. There are some that have de-evolved in areas and use forms of vampirism on other humans and other beings, absorbing the energies through the fingertips. Very much like in your Earth Final Conflict, where the vampires have the claws on the fingertips. It is very similar in that particular way. You find a mixed bag. Some are more primitive, while others are more advanced. Some of them have genetic issues from also having been genetically modified by the Orions, and needed a larger harem of wives in order to be able to procreate and find certain genetic lineages that were more suited to their own genetic compatibilities. It's actually a mixed bag. You found all of the above in the Cahokia area and also in the Mississippian mound type of areas, along with the native peoples, who were also descendant of galactic brothers and sisters as well, and Lemuria. Also some of your other structures down in your South America and Mexico and the like were also used. Some of them were made with sound technology, others giants built. The pyramids in Egypt originally, they were created originally by sound technology, but also some of the larger structures were also created by giants. Say some of the structures that were built with using large pieces of basalt were used with sound technology and magnetic resonance frequencies. It's actually a mixed bag through history, as you would say.
So it is an interesting thing. So when people refer to the giant builder race, your perspective on what that means, because oftentimes the way they have portrayed it is they always portray it via it must be the Anunnaki. And so it seems to me that that instead of bringing their name into it, if you actually just use giant builder race, that you're actually dealing with just people or elementals or beings that are larger, with their culture either, as yours was, deriving from Earth itself, or a hybrid of someone from another race who happened to be large as well, and or a race, right, and or a race that came about from genetic manipulation. So when you use the word giant builder race, my curiosity is, your perspective is that would all of what I kind of was referring to fall under that umbrella of what that means?
Yes, indeed, it would. You are dealing with different hybridized races. You're dealing with like say even ones like the Cyclopses or pharaoh-like ones or wizard-like ones or ones like myself. You're not dealing with any one set of beings, just but the fact that they were fairly large. And also the fact that your legend says when angels mated with humans, they created giants. There is a truth to this because of the fact that you were dealing with, in some cases, larger beings that could shrink down and mate with human women, then created some of those larger mutations and variations. So a lot of these things are true. You have, again, a mixed bag of stories that are being considered as one thing when it is literally one picture of things.
So when you go back again, and here you guys were always existing, and then you see the tragedy that happens to, again, I still refer to it as Maldek. I know other people want to use different names. The planet that was virtually destroyed at the same time the war was going on, that Mars lost its atmosphere. And you can even see the weapon across Mars. If you get certain pictures of Mars, you see this black, dark streak going across all of Mars, which I believe was either residual of a planet hitting in a weapons fire, something like that occurred. So Mars lost its atmosphere, a lot of its atmosphere at that time. I think the planet looked quite different before this war occurred. Then again, our history is then you have a lot of screaming souls that are literally just around in shock and awe because of the destruction collected up by the Orions, and then started a farming cycle on the planet Earth for energies. That seems to me to be the bit of the historic story. Your people were present on Earth when all that was happening.
Yes, we saw all of this taking place. The war, you would call it the war in heaven. It was done by fools with large guns at their disposal on all sides. And not saying beings could not defend themselves, but let's just say, you always say the best laid plans of mice and men in this, they could see themselves they couldn't see themselves in as you would say, the proper light. They would see themselves as infallible or indestructible, when in fact they were at the time the weakest minds among them. We are not denigrating this by saying these words. We are just saying that they fell very easily into a pact with darker beings that wished to manipulate them. They are, in some instances, they are okay now. Some of them have not come out of their dark states, you know of whom we speak, but the others reveled in the dark manipulation, while others rose above it in the here and now in these energies. But all of them became manipulated. The war for Mars, for instance, that still rages on even within the descendant lineages of the very beings that were once there. The even beings that claim it as home in other respects. The division that was caused amongst all of them, even in your modern day, will end up creating yet again another graveyard. The kingdom of what you call Mars long ago was more of a beautiful planet, but those people in their manipulation became more separatist. They became more interested in mining resources, in mining gems, and mining different dusts and, say, spices, and all this was like what was depicted in your movie Dune. It was more interesting in that respect. It was depicting the 13 Cabal families and reptilian involvement, mind you. But in this, the many factions that were involved, some left the system while others got captured. And your screaming souls of what you call Maldek is actually, unfortunately, still in play. There are screaming souls that have occupied crystals. There are screaming souls that have occupied planetoids. There are some that have become planetoids. Some of your planets in your system are the gods of old, as you like to call them, but there are some souls that have occupied these. There are some that volunteered to be the recipients of dark energy, such as your Saturn. There are some that have anointed themselves the eye of the system, like your Jupiter. There are some that have become the harbinger of doom, such as your Pluto. and others that have been manipulated into certain specific patterns that foretell disasters or triumphs within your society, such as some of your astrology. We're not saying astrology is bad, mind you. We're saying some of those legends were created in order to show what these different planets were doing to your own at different times in history, such as your Pluto reemergence recently, creating the fall of the Roman Empire. In all actuality, it was Saturn that did this, but we will not point fingers. This also forming the times of your United States was more or less the times of Pluto. These are interesting times, yes. And yes, it is good to learn the patterns of these, but just know they can also be manipulated. Your system is full of old technology and also wonders to behold, but it is full of nightmares as well, currently, with some of your Nazi contingencies in your system and some of your slavery that is actually coming to a close. Your ICC, for instance, eventually, it won't necessarily completely change hands at a more right away, but others will get in on the action, want a piece of the action as well when more is found out. There are also treaties being led up within that of your galactic communities. This is why people are seeing more of beings such as myself integrating into society. People are seeing more incarnated, what they believe are fairies. Also seeing actual ones walking in your society, such as who Viking ran into recently. Also being such as some Lemurian contingencies like dear Conrad ran into recently, and also the being you ran into in Nightdale. You'll begin to see, or in Raleigh, excuse me, you'll begin to see more and more of these types of occurrences around the globe as these treaties loosen.
So it's an interesting thing you talk about the energies that are coming in from particular planets who've now, I guess I want to see particular souls whose souls also are within a planet who feel very involved in this expression with their particular energies. Some of them you're saying became corrupted, more corrupted back in the day. Some have healed, some have not healed. So it's a very interesting thing because when you bring up the energies, and so many people believe in the astrology of where the planets alive, particular type of energies to come through, this, that, and the other. What's interesting to me about it is that, again, what's going on right now it's very interesting because it was like lights, camera, boom, action. And at the same time that, was it Pluto coming around where the United States was formed? Putin's now invading the Ukraine and killing lots of people. He did it on those energies. So, I mean, yes. The interesting thing about energies and stuff are, again, they're utilized by people with benevolent thoughts as well as people by malevolent thoughts. It's almost like I don't quite understand yet the energetic wave that happens that both ride upon. But something happens like that. Because
it is more neutral base that it can be utilized either as dark creation energy or as what you would call light creation energy. But that is too dualistic. It is more or less a power source that can be used for any and all. The creation of one nation and the decimation of another. Like with your Putin, I will put this name in quotes, the energies that are being generated for this and are also being absorbed from afar by whom in this. But the creation of the United States also had its nefarious beginnings as well during this particular time. They were, some of your earlier founders were instructed to construct it at that particular time to where it would become a stronghold later. You would see it as for the free and the brave. But who hides amongst that sort of mask? Who shows themselves to you in the theater of puppets, but also hides in the mask of freedom? You see, though you do have more than others around you, there are some other nations that have more than you that you are not even hearing about on your television or internet. They are sitting neutral watching all of this. not just galactic, not just elemental, other humans and other human nations, that they are attempting to just stay out of it completely. And this is where your United States was at one time before your Second World War. But I digress in this. The energies that are being utilized, these are power times that anyone, and I mean anyone, can use this for business type of ventures, for conquest, for creation of any kind, or destruction of any kind. And this is no accident that at this time in your history, when it came up on the Pluto conjunction, that you had one of the largest false flags in your human history befall you in 2020, and the continuation of it dragging out to the convergence of Pluto going up to, say, when people were getting enough of it, revolting against your local government, meaning like your truckers in Canada. Then what does it switch over to? Another Hitler. They dragged it all out to where it could conjoin with the Pluto convergence. This is what the time frame they were waiting for. This is why they kept delaying and delaying and delaying and delaying. And even though it had already hit critical mass 1,000 times over, they knew if they could stretch it, very much if you're trying to stretch a piece of cloth beyond its tolerance, or blow a balloon up beyond its tolerance, they knew it would pop. But if they could link it to something else, it would just continue like a movie or a film into yet another false flag, but with real people being culled. This is what is currently going on.
So it's very important, again, for people to understand that maybe they should rethink. Again, just because somebody ties something which they think is positive to an event pattern, an energetic pattern, I think it was really important what you said. Sometimes these energies are just a wave of extra energy that allows for a stronger co-creation if you can harness it, if you know how to harness it. But you need to look at that energy as more of a neutral thing where anyone can. And so it goes to the importance for people to put their co-creative intention out there of what they want and not want. I can't seem to stress that enough, because people are sitting around thinking they're so helpless. But if everybody on this planet sat down and basically said, I do not want another country invading and killing innocent people, and they said it will not happen on the planet that I live, in these energies, instead of people not doing it, they're feeling sad, they're being in fear, they're doing whatever, they're co-creating inappropriately for someone else's good, not understanding how to co-create, then guess what would happen? This thing would stop, and then a new way would develop. So we are learning, and there are cries that come out from humanity in general. But again, we're in the beginnings of learning how to co-create, and we need to relook at these energy waves in a different way, to that they're what's going to help us have more of a unifying co-creative event once we really get how to co-create for our benefit and not for someone else's benefit.
Yes, and people are doing this for someone else's benefit every moment of every day. They believe it is for their own, and they're doing this for other people. Like saying this is an unpopular thing to say, but sending the blessings of Jesus to people, or the blessings of Michael to people, or other beings of the like. You do not know who these beings have truly been. You do not know where they've been. You don't know what they've been. You don't know what they've been aligned with. You do not know who the priests in which you covet are aligned with, or the prophets that what they've been aligned with. This and this are all that matters in that respect. Your own intuition and your own mind. This is what is currently going on now, is people, by staying in what you call the malaise, are actually unwittingly, in some instances, harming others. What he has said previously. This is even though judgment in that respect isn't always warranted, because then you start to reverb that very same intention that the other side is putting out by always calling them stupid, dumb, and degenerate. Even though this is a case in your world currently. One side can empower the other by saying, you're unawake, you're stupid. You're reaffirming the unawake and stupid, even though this may be true. They themselves are seeing you as selfish, therefore they are reflecting that. It is a spell, a very maddening set of magic that is taking place. All that the Orion agenda ever was to divide and conquer. This is what is currently going on. Yes, but there are those people that do radiate the co-creative field of other beings they know not what, and other agendas they know not what. They see it as nobility, when in fact, it is they are participating in the degeneration of the human race. They do not yet realize this. There are others on the flip side of what you would call the awake side doing the same thing. They do not realize this. Be truly awake is to actually take the third side and stay out of some of these fights, unless you are called unequivocally and intuitively to enter yourself into this, to start to correct some of this. It is best to alter the energies outside of this, unless the fight calls you to be in on this, not in a negative way, but in a way to end this type of division. To actually be, you would say, a cleanup crew, but that's not entirely accurate, or janitor, that's not entirely accurate either. It is more or less negotiating these different energies from situation to situation. Now, in your case of Russia, yes, there is unmitigated evil taking place right now. Granted, Ukraine has been the seat of power for a long time. And yes, this was a cabal seat of power. And is there some white hat, you would call it, stuff going on? You can say that. There is no united coalition, I'm sorry to say, as dear Isaac has put it very eloquently. But in this situation, yes, your Putin, always look in the eyes. If you see nothing in the eyes in anybody you look in, you know something has happened. That is a quick and easy way to tell, is look for the dead eyes, as he calls it. You see the dead eyes, you see evil.
And it's important, but again, what comes to my mind about, but what can people do? I agree, you stay out of certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean literally, I'm just going to sit here in nothingness.
No, not at all.
So let me give you how I think about it, and I want your input on what you think. So in general, when I say co-create, it's a very interesting thing. I really feel people can put out the energies to say, I do not want to live on a world where this kind of stuff is happening. It needs to end. It is unacceptable. It will not be taking place on a world I live in. And add one other thing, and I'm not going anywhere. So I think it's really important, because what they've been able to do, I think, as well, to divide and conquer people, is to divide and conquer them in the duality in their own thoughts.
Yes.
I do not want to live in a world that is doing this. This will never end. I need to just die.
Yes,
right? Because that's happening a lot now too.
Where people are wanting to exit, saying this is never going to stop, I'm going to leave. This is not the correct stance, I agree.
So, so when you're making your co-creations on what kind of planet you really want to live in, add in there that you're not going anywhere, that this is about, again, the energetics building and collecting. Again, we're not fighting over the war, but we do not approve of this happening, do not want to see it anymore. Enough collective energy regarding that amongst humanity. Instead of thinking that it cannot be changed in your mind, it will be changed, and it's starting now with these collective energies. Instead of saying this story now, it is changing. You do build that collective energy. So to me, that is the wise ways to use like this incoming energy to tear down a way of being that we collectively do not want to see, and let arise from the ashes something that we feel is much better. Mm-hmm. And you use the Pluto energies or any conjunction or anything where a new wave is coming in to help do things like that, and have the belief system that it is absolutely within our power to do it.
Yes, and in this respect, even if something did manipulate that conjunction, you are still utilizing it for the destruction of that bad manipulation and for the rise of something better. But don't always assume that like you two have said, do not assume that a great war would bring about a great peace, such as your Armageddon or fake alien invasion. These are things people are focusing on even now, and this is not necessarily a good thing with this conjunction. On the other side of this, yes, the plan was to create yet another tyrant in this, very much how your Adolf Hitler did things through Europe. This is what they've turned Vladimir Putin into, even though he was something else prior to this, and everybody has seen this to some extent. The eyes were different. They have created what you would call a clone presence in this particular way. And to create the death and destruction coming from this what they want to call the cold timeline or culling timeline, or in some cases your Nazis want to call it the purification timeline. This is not necessarily the correct final solution, as your Hitler would call it, but in this, the true solution, not a final one, the true one, would be exactly what you have said when people stand up and say, no more of this. Even if it is a false flag, even if it is a narrative, there are real people, as you've said, that have gotten harmed, children and all. So in this, it is up to your people to say enough is enough.
And that you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
Yes, indeed.
Every elderly person that is sitting in their home waiting to die has a lot of energy.
You do not need a sword to rise up to do this.
You do not, and you don't even need to, God forbid, you have no ways to get around, have to go over there and stand with a bunch of people. Your collective energies gather from the comfort of where you are sitting and your intention and the energies going out. They want everyone to be separated, thinking this is the only way that these things can come about. Mm-hmm. There is a great saying out there, but it also gives misvisions of what it means. You know, the saying, and now it's gonna escape me, that tyranny will never be overcome with compliance. That is basically meaning, again, tyranny will never be overcome with you doing nothing. It's going to continue. That type of energy is going to come through. But
yes, but in your manipulation of energies and correction of energies, that is not doing nothing.
Right. Correct, because the vision they, I think, want you to have is something that will benefit them, which is revolution.
Yes, they want
physical revolution.
They want to be able to call people more to have a violent revolution. So they're saying the manipulation of energies is BS. They say, oh, you're lazy sitting at home, you're doing nothing. No, that is not true at all. You are actually contributing. Now, it is the ones that aren't contributing to either one, either in a warrior respect or a magical respect, are the ones that are actually contributing poorly. Those are actually fewer and far between in that respect. Some are actually aiming the energies badly during this time. Other ones are actually acting with violence. But there's those that are using the warrior properly and the magic properly.
So please understand, we talk about these things very openly. We never want to leave a conversation with you feeling there's nothing you can do. It is actually the opposite. If you understand who you are, your co-creative intent, and your abilities to co-create, then you understand that it takes zero money to do these types of things and to force these types of co-creations when they're collectively, the energies are gathered and pushed through to push things together. It is untrue. Everyone is a valuable soul. Everyone in a human skin suit has these abilities to be able to do amazing things. And now is the time basically for you to throw caution to the wind and maybe put some of that positive intention out there for change, and wait and watch and see what happens. You will see things begin to happen to convince you that there is something to what we're saying.
Yes, they wanted you to believe that you also needed money to accomplish this as well. You do not. Even though you have the ability to manipulate those energies to bring in more abundant flow and therefore more money, which the energies then create the other, you can do that in turn. You do not need the money in order to create these good vibes to send to other places. It may sound like what you would say hippie language in that particular way, but you're actually ceremoniously creating the energies to send to these places. This is why you have to be careful. It's one of those be careful what you wish for elements. People wished for a war before peace. Look at what you have. People wished for certain conflicts just to get things over with. That is not the way to do it. You go straight to the peace. You go straight to, I will not take this anymore. But it doesn't always necessarily mean taking up the sword. Now, there will become those times where that may be needed, or it may not. The warriors will have their day in that respect, but just know the magical type of people or the energetic people are also warriors in their own right, using the different earth magics, utilizing the planetary magics, their own intuitive and higher oversoul type of magic and transmutative abilities. That's a warrior all the same.
Yes. And so I know we kind of deviated and we were just going to have a talk with the elementals. Maybe a lot of people were thinking it was just going to be about you and your homeland. But in these current present moments, I think the one thing that I always want to do as well is to gain perspective from other races and other beings on what they're seeing here, how humanity is growing and how humanity can continue to grow, in a way that will be able to positively continue our dialogues or continue the expansion of humanity in a way that is, more inclusive and not destructive. So I guess it really probably to some people really looks like, boy, they really went off on a tangent. But I actually feel this is a camaraderie moment where we're actually all agreeing on something that's very important to come to light along with galactic history or elemental history as well for bringing all of this information forward.
Well, technically, this was a talk, yes. So this also falls under to be careful what conduits you open, you see, and be careful what conduits that you wish for and the doorways that you open, you see, with this and with this, with the intention that you put out there. Be careful what you open. In this respect, yes, our history was there, but also this was a talk with the elementals, yes. So in this, or what you refer to as elemental in this respect. So it was not necessarily a deviation.
Well, good. I appreciate you seeing it that way. And I hope the people listening, again, are getting some greater information and understanding. So I am just actually now going to turn this over to you to allow you, to say whatever you want, whatever you feel folks would like to learn about you or learn about your thoughts on things.
Yes, so as far as positive conduits go, as far as you hear elementals talking about fairy circles and the like, you can create different circles that bring in positivity. It's also prudent to shift things around in those circles as you have done in your yard by dismantling the original circle and then creating new things. This is actually very, very good. Creating an outdoor altar space, not in worship, but in focus of protection and peace and tranquility and joy and balance. All of these things to be in balance in situations or have situations create balance, which may look like destruction in your society, but just know that certain balancing and also even unfortunately culling has been taking place in your society. So creating these focal points, whereas you bring in those balancing pillars are very crucial right now, especially when you're close in a neighborhood to creatures that do not wish a particular set of balancing to take place, or any sort of positive elemental or balanced elemental races such as myself. Let's just say they show their ass on a regular basis on top of their own heads. So this is for this reason I am saying this, because they can hear every word I am saying. So they do not like our kind, emanating our particular energy, what they would call stink upon their land, or what they consider to be their land. So in this respect, I will say to everybody, cause a stink about whatever it is that you want to see changed, including creating a focal point. To some other race, it would be a stink. To yourselves, it would be change and peace. Just remember this. There are other beings out there that do not want you to have peace. They want you to divide. They want you to be outside of what unity truly is. It starts with you in your home. It starts whatever lane you're in, whatever you're doing, whatever that passion and creativity is. And I know you've heard that a lot on Interstellar Council, but it starts with that and it begins to change that. The beings such as those that I'm referring to would want only their kind in an area. Your kind is very, very diverse. Theirs is more or less the same cookie cutter, literally in this case. Even though they are adding your own DNA into the mix, they must see you as unique and good in that respect for themselves, or they would not be doing it in that way. However, by creating these positive focal points, you begin to not only balance yourself in the land, but you begin to balance them out as well, if that is even possible at all. So in this respect, I will digress because their harassment will only continue, and it will continue upon yourselves if I continue. So even though I could intervene completely to squish them like a bug, this cannot necessarily take place. I can help protect the property as my people could, so that there is no backlash. This is also a conduit in which that could be opened through some of your devices and circles and crystals. So I will leave you to it. And Tech in order, and I'm of the Frabosi people. Thank you. My left hand's freezing. All right, but yeah. Ooh, yeah, we've been on a while too, I think. But yeah, there was no sense of time there. But he was starting to pick up, the Ebens were starting to stir a little bit close by. So he just dislodged because he didn't want to cause blowback. I think they were only so long able to keep them from not noticing the Frabosi presence, but and the giant presence. But these two groups do not like each other at all. It causes stirring and eventually can get to a hostility point, like a breaking point in that area. So the Frabosi don't want to cause that for people in the neighborhood. So they want to keep a peace or a tranquility. It doesn't mean that they are capitulating to what the Ebens are doing. I want to clarify. They're not capitulating to them in any way, shape, or form. By them keeping that peace, they are not capitulating. By keeping the by keeping the land cleansed of the stink of like all the bad energies, they are not capitulating. It may seem like people not doing anything or seemingly not doing anything are actually capitulating. Just like the old phrase that I happen to have the sticker of. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men and women do nothing. That still holds and is still true. But by saying that us sitting in a chair here are capitulating to beings that are those beings that we're referring to, no. We fervently disagree and are fervently against that. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go hunt them down with an AK-47 at the moment. That is one way of doing it, and if the need should arise, maybe in that respect. But with energies, you are actually correcting things millimeters and centimeters at a time, to the point where that environment becomes toxic to beings like this. So that is still not doing nothing. The ones that are doing nothing are some people that, like he said, are more few and far between. The cabal would like you to think that all these people say not working or not doing this or not doing that are lazy, but they're also being mind controlled to do this, for one. Two, it is not going down exactly as they're saying on the news either. And three, they are not necessarily doing nothing if they're actually doing their passions and doing what they want to do in life. They're actually changing that energy millimeters at a time. There may be a time where people need to fight and do things, but it's not like that at the moment. It's just like, say, during when they had the draft, for instance, they were selecting people that had no business picking up a weapon because they were not necessarily a warrior in that respect. They thought that, oh, given enough push or compression, they would know how to fight and not be traumatized by it. That's not true at all. Some of your most hardened warriors still have PTSD. So that, and some of the people good at the job still have that. So what I'm trying to get at is you can't force people into an area that they can't be, but they are in a lane where it's still there to make changes. So if that makes any sense to anybody. So I think we can take it out from this point. I know this has been a long time since we've had a talk with the elementals episode, but it's been a long time coming. And this one will be on our Patreon, but will also be on our future, not too distant future subscription platform. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Oh, before we started our broadcast, the tree fae usually asks that I pick up trash and stuff like that that's blowing around. And they pointed to the little tree fae, Clorvis and Beeman pointed to and the locals pointed to a bag that was blowing around out by the window. And it was this Target bag that was blowing around. And I also think they were pointing out that, property targeted it. It had a big red target like the Target bag, but it was like pointed right at us, like right at the window. It wasn't on the window, it was a little bit further away that way, but it was pointed right at us, and then it blew on. I said I'd pick it up afterwards, but it's not there anymore. And the target here it's not that it's pretty good hike from the house. Well, there is, I believe, one, and it's over in Prescott, but it's not like somebody couldn't have bought something and brought it back here. But what happened was it was essentially showing target on the property, which like the Ebens and some of the military stuff. It's essentially what that was being shown, was the energies we're targeting, and that's what was actually being shown to us. I couldn't find the bag again when I went out there. It was a large one too. It was one of those big ones, and wasn't there anymore. So I will find out if there's any more synchronicities that go with this, and I'll include it. But I'll end this here. It is 1:24 p.m. Saturday, March 5th, 2022. Thank you.